I'm gonna read chapter 20, no, page 29 of Bendy the Ink Machine. Of course, you're not gonna see my face because I'm probably gonna fill it in darkness and put a Bendy thing. I'll probably play some Bendy music as well because it's fun. Okay? Well, see ya. Gotta read this book. That point, well, at least not the kind of girl you brought home to mother. As they said, there were always an escort, a brother or father, or some mandatory aunt squeezed into a formal dress in a darkness somber color. But there are unique times. There are also unique conditions. And there are definitely unique girls. They were nicknamed the Hello Girls and were among the very first women to ever work in communication. They were being trained as switchboards operator at the facility. Then they shipped overseas to London or Paris to help with communications with the boys at the front. They were nicknamed this because, of course, they answer every call coming through them with a cheerful "Hello." These girls were invited to any dance host on the base, and they didn't need chaperones because we were considered both the date and their date and their guardians. We looked out for our girls. That isn't to say romance didn't blossom and hearts weren't broken, but we had a respect for these brave women serving the cause. Like nurses, these impressive women were a very important part of the war effort. And while some of the boys in the corps would say was a shame a girl had to work, and others saw them as a little more than a dance or a walk in the dark, it was a moment they helped build the fountain for my hiring practice at the studio. Even now, I told it's strange how I have so many women in high position, but I just say it's about the work, and that's all. Mother did the books, the girls served the country, and that's all that matters. We were a bit late when the Donaldson flung open the dance. The hall in is typical dramatic fashion. Uh, there were lights everywhere. The ladies were the best dressed, and the men still in uniform. The ladies were allowed to be civilian dressed for the dance. The music was loud and full of life. Couple of the floor dancing of the rage time rhythm being played by the army band. This made me grin. How I love music. I grabbed Lottie's hand, asking her to dance while guiding her to the floor. "You're not a bad dancer," she shouted above the music. Even with her talking loud, it was hard to hear her. Her voice was sweet and high. "I know," I replied with a grin. She grinned back. I know. I'm not supposed to talk about women grinning. There was always a reaction to that word. Because I used it to describe Alex reacting to something Bendy had done. People would heard just a smile, but dang it, all if Lottie did grin, she was some kind of special. "Where do you learn that? And where did you learn that?" she asked. "I don't know. I was just good at picking things up. I danced some in a living room with my mother as a kid, but it was true. Mostly it was just watching others and copying them. Like we all know, copying from life is what I do best." We finished the dance and moved to the side of the room, sitting on a round table with yellowing tablecloths and a small clear vase with some wildflowers inside. Donaldson was sitting with Angela, and Eckhart has vanished somewhere with Tilly. "Not bad, you two. You should start a vaudeville act," said Donaldson. Lottie laughed, and I shook my head and went aside. What will we be called?" she said. Donaldson thought for a bit long. He was never the creative type. Before he hurt himself, I said, "The Private and Miss Lottie." She turned to me, did her grin, and said, "I love it." There was something in her smile that made me think, "Joseph, time to change the subject." So I stood up, extended my hands, inviting her for another dance. She took it and glanced. Your lace is united. I looked down, and it was hardly the big news item of the day. Oh, is it? Let me. She bent down, and I bent down too. I didn't need to help her with my laces, and I wasn't too much of a gentleman to allow her to do such a thing. No, no. Lottie, please. We met the face on my shoe. It's one of those moments you see in movies when you realize how close your face is to another person. In any other situation, this might have been a romantic one. She glanced down, a blush growing to her head, and that's when she saw the letter on my boot. What are these? She asked. I gratefully took the laces from her gentle grip. They were, they were there when I got them. She touched them with her glove and said quietly, almost to herself, "Unusual intervals." "Yes," I said. She seemed shaken out of her reverie, then stood upright and sat down abruptly. I quickly tied the lace, and instead of moving on the dance floor, sat down too, joining my table mates again. We didn't talk about the initials after that, and we didn't dance together again for the rest of the night. I didn't think something had changed between us. I was pretty sure she was still sweet on me, and I didn't think much more about the dance after the face. To be honest, I quite forgotten all about it until one day. Sitting in the mess hall, I suddenly noticed I wasn't alone. I didn't eat alone every day, but I always have been a man of quiet contemplation. And such moments were rare during training. I managed to find a corner under a large fan that was a little too windy for most even on hot days. When I was close to there, I did it knowing no one would be joining me, not even Donaldson or Eckhart. Lottie, on the other hand, I hadn't counted for. Indeed, the girls usually ate somewhere else, somewhere closer to the communication building, I assume. When I saw her sitting opposite me, I invincibly turned to look at my fellow recruits. Even though they were paying close attention to the string beats, I could tell all eyes were on me. That is definitely something you learn fast. If you want people to notice you, have a beautiful woman on your arm. Now, what are you doing here, Lottie? She grinned at me, because of course she did. I've been thinking a lot about ZW. That drew a blank. I thought maybe she was talking in code or something. She let her short hand class. Well, before I tell you what this is, uh, make sure to like and subscribe, because you've been listening for 8 minutes now. I'm very surprised. Well, let's continue on with the story. One, the most used of the W's, and I think the most useless. That's that being said, I'm not going to lie and said I never uttered it. I definitely did that day. On your shoes. I've been trying to find a soldier that with those initials, and it's been hard. Those are pretty unique initials. I nodded and chewed. She was right. ZW definitely had a sort of originality to it. So, no luck in finding my former footmate then? I asked. Lottie laughed and sighed. No luck. She looked perceptibly up towards the fan. I only just noticed how it was blowing a loose curl around, making it dance across her forehead. She wasn't leaving, which meant she needed something from me. And since I wasn't about to declare my love for her or ask her for a stroll, the best I could do was come up with something to contribute to this conversation. Well, have you looked at the woman? I asked. The woman, your girls. Maybe there were initials of his sweetheart. If so, chances are she wasn't here. She was from his hometown. But if you're looking for more fun with this, maybe she trained here too. Her grin got extra wide, and she stuttered and rushed. Yes! Oh, Joseph, you're so smart. I'm going to begin inquiries directly. If she'd been allowed to back then, I have no doubt she had given me a hug, maybe even a kiss on the cheeks. But remember, It was still the time of tight courses and emotional restraint. So all she did was turn pretty much a full circle in excitement and leap with a big wave and thank you. The name has started now. Who is ZW? The time and I saw each other, I get a special report like I was her commanding officer. It took me a while to realize it, but I started to understand her devotion to the game. More and more of us are getting sent overseas. Our friends, our family, more and more we were getting word back about what was happening over there. It was dark times, and some entertainment, even the form of initials, was a welcome respite. We eventually we eventually decided ZW was had to be a lover of the former owner of these boots of mine. She did work as a hello girl, Lottie has and made sure that combing through all the female names she could find on the base. So it must have been a sweetheart from home. We concluded. Well, Lottie concluded. I just played along. We decided our male main character was named John, and he was worn boots in the training, and he was shipped overseas. Got a standard issue pair, and it was used for lie to tell ourselves. Because I think we both thought darker thoughts about the previous owner, and I came to his football. We also decided his lover name was Zelda, because she had an extravagant name. We, we gave her flaming red hair. He was handsome, blonde, and she was striking and fair. He loved her, but he was poor. She loved him, but she was rich. It could never be. But they wrote to each other long, complicated love letters, quoting Shakespeare and Keats. I have no problem monitoring now, and I did not know by Shakespeare and Keats at the time. But I knew they were writers, and I knew intellectuals talked about them. So I was happy to suggest that latter when she suggests the former. And in the next letter, maybe she managed to convince her brother that she really loved him. Lottie said once, as we strolled around the training grounds during a rare half-hour break we managed coordinates. Maybe her brother knew him. Maybe her brother is serving with him, I added. Yes, she said, with a, with a skip in her step. Yes, war knows nothing of class. Brothers side by side. Brother in arm and brother in law, I said, liking the way it sounded. Oh, Joseph, you have such ways with words, she said, looking at me, her eyes twinkling fiercely. I knew I was taking a risk with this game, and I could see it all over her face. She was falling in love with me. I took a step out to the side to get a little bit more distance between us. Unfortunately, the bulge sounded soon after we had to part ways. As luck would have it, she was shipped off soon after. She was stationed in London, which made me happy. I knew the one was commended, and while uh, I might not have been in love with her, I thought of her falling. She was safe, and I was glad. For my heart had been signed to the lab, which was its own u- unit but attached to the training base. And thus, I was still serving my country in New Jersey. I became quite occupied, helping my superior develop the new technologies, and her letters were a welcome break from all the numbers and equation. She wrote me a tale about her new post of London and the quirky English way. I developed quite the taste of tea and scone, even though they were a rare delicacy these days. There are young men who worked in these communication law labs, and who was a secret stash he shares with me sometimes. I like that she had found herself a boo, or at least someone to give her attention. Her letters were warmly welcomed by me, but I noticed the tone in them shift as a week and a month passed. The days are getting shorter, but the hours are growing longer here. I am constantly sending messages to men who then are reported dead to the next day. The woman who is in charge for our boarding is the dear one, but her nephew died last week, and she's been spending so much time alone in her sitting room. The world is in mourning. She she too had a way with words, and her words got sadder and sadder and darker until they hit my soul, and I found it dragging me down as well. This is dark times, Joseph. I have many dark thoughts. I think sometimes the world will never be right again. There's no time for romance or dancing or high teas. It's all just bleak and worrisome. It was too much. I couldn't tell her to stop writing. That wouldn't be fair. I knew my letters were of great comfort because she told me often and praised my ability to tell a phrase. It was then I concocted the plan. I remembered my father and the elves. I thought about the time passed with the help of make believe, that the world would still be what the world was, dark and dangerous, but one could make it wondrous again. The next letter I sent her, after detailing the usual I was and what was happening, I added a new paragraph. A new incredible thing has happened, Lottie. I admit I thought it was all fun and game was, but you were actually alright. ZW is a real person, and it is the girlfriend of my former boot carrier. His name is not John, it's James, which I think is pretty darn close to a guess. He came by the base to meet us with his former colleagues, and I happened to be in the lab when he stopped by to say hi to Corporal Arch. He's been injured with just his leg, sharpened on his gap, so he was sent home. He said he was lucky to have survived. We talked for a while, and I don't know. Nathan A. When I first read this, I forgot, despite Joey saying as much, that this was fiction and spent too much time racking my brain over who this Shane was. Joey is so good with his storytelling that even when he tells you it's not real, you can forget a moment later. And I don't know what made him notice my boots, but he did. And that when he saw the initial. Zelda! Yes, Lottie. Her name is Zelda indeed. What a guess. That one was yours, I believe. I must say I was speechless. And that doesn't happen to me that often. We got talking. No, our version of the story was not correct. She and he were both children of tailors, and how they met. She was indeed his sweetheart. Well, I just had to tell him about his fancy old tales. He loved it so much. He told me he wanted to, tell you hello, and that he hopes you're doing well, and that you should know how much the men in France appreciate everything you gals are doing for them. We decided to become pen pals. I'll keep you posted. Then I continued with the usual sign-off, send the letter on the way. For the first time, I was on tenterhooks waiting for her to arrive. Week passed slowly, but sure enough, eventually, an envelope came with her recognizable handwriting. Joseph, how marvelous! I never would have thought it could be real. So many stories, dreams I had as a child. I've been dashed in a view of what I see of the world now. This is so remarkable. It restores my faith in humanity and in hope. Please tell James. This is so close. You are completely correct. And Zelda, imagine her name is truly Zelda. Hello from me. At that point, I sighed such a sigh of relief that the make-believe had worked. But not just for Lottie. It had a fantastic effect on me, too. Working in the lab through fascinating, though fascinating, was also mind-bubbling. And getting to make up these stories to set my brain ablaze, I started composing letters from James, supposedly, transcribed by another fellow lab trainee, Nathan Arch, to Lottie. I sent her one of my letters and told her much stories, My return home was one of the best days of my life. My whole family waiting on the platform of a train station. Zelda is standing there, holding an English settler puppy in her arms. Quite quickly, after had to get married, so I had a simple, beautiful wedding at the country church, and there were flowers. The bride had daisy in her hair. Daisies! Oh, James, tell Zelda that that's my absolute favorite type of flower. I, of course, knew that. Soon after a pregnancy was announced and sent through, I didn't think the work would continue long for them. Well, Nathan A. I don't have any recollection of doing this. Oh God. Babies to be born. Sure enough, it did, and the little boy named Timothy entered into life of Giselda and James. I was still keeping up my old real life correspondence with Lottie. The difference in her letter was striking. She had gone from dark description of dead men in trenches to stories about new friends and finding a way to host party with rations. She spoke about Davy again, the young man with scones. Her spirit will raise. And it was all thanks to me and my make believe. Eventually, the letters became less frequent. I understood that my part in her show was coming to an end. For that matter, so was James and Zelda. Even her replies to them got shorter, less excited, and I realized that she didn't need us anymore. Her life was now the new make believe. Her engagement to Davy, her friends in London, even her work, which has once been so heavy, was now a source of great pride. When the war ended, I didn't hear from her again. I never got a letter that said goodbye or ended the story in a satisfying way. But as a person who never liked an incomplete tale, I decided to finish it for myself, in my imagination. I decided that what happened was she sent such a letter, but it got lost. Somewhere over Atlantics. In it, I imagined she told me about her wedding, about her small home on the outskirts of the city, big enough to have a garden. It's just so lovely, Joseph. You must have come visit. I miss you so. I do consider you such a very dear friend that the memories of you alone makes me grin ear to ear. To think how much we have grown and changed over the years. I must thank you for the remarkable friendship. I always thought it was so funny that it all started because of a pair of boots. How delightful, isn't it? From boots to bliss, feels like something you write. Well, I must be off. David is calling me into tea. So much love, Lonnie. Maybe Lonnie died. Well, we don't know that. It's a theory. Maybe next time when we read this story. Maybe. Maybe one day. We'll find out. Now, it's you decide for what you think about this. And thank you for, following me all these years. Some of them are botted, my accounts, but not the bots are not from me. It's from another chick. But that doesn't matter. I think. Well, see you next. Because one day, I hope I grow into a channel. Great channel. Not today, but I try my best. And I hope you try to.